Well, before we begin the Midrash, words of Devarim 8 verse 10, which says, "So you'll eat and be satisfied. You'll bless Adonai your God for the good land He has given you." So let's do that. We have eaten and we're satisfied. We thank you for the land. It's in Yeshua's name we thank you. Amen. All right. So this section of Psalm 19 says, "Let the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be pleasing before you, O Yahweh, my rock and my redeemer." And that's our prayer here this evening. Those a couple slides here by way of review slides. We've talked about this pretty much every week since we've been doing Hitgalut, but Hitgalut is the term that's used in a lot of different Hebraic contexts as the term for Revelation, as well as the title of this book as Revelation. The Delitzsch Hebrew text of Revelation, which is a translation from Greek into Hebrew, uses the word chazon there, which it means, it stands for or is translated typically as vision. There is also a British Library Hebrew text that's not the Delitzsch translation, also has the word vision, or as rather chazon in there in the text, whereas for the title of the book. And Gilyana is the Aramaic version, and Apocalypsis is the Greek for Revelation. And this is the slide that we've talked about a couple times that shows the connections between the plagues, or references, not necessarily a connection, but a reference from the same plagues that Egypt was dealt, is the plagues that in many ways appear again on the pages of this vision or this revelation. So last week we had a question about times, and half a time. And looking it up, we see that the thing is that Zemanim is not the text used in Daniel, where we first see that, because that section of Daniel is in Aramaic. And so comparing the Aramaic of Daniel, which is on the second line there, the top line is the Aramaic of the Peshitta for Revelation 12:4. And what I'm sorry, 14, thank you. And the similarity between them is quite interesting. Idan is the word for time. Idanin is the term in Daniel 7:5, and it's the same word without the vav in front of it in Revelation 12:4, and the same. If you see Idan, Idanin is the second word if you go from right to left on the top line. And I didn't really find anything definitive in terms of dual versus plural, except that what I did find is that in Aramaic, the dual merged with the plural and later disappeared. Tracing we found in Old Aramaic with spelling such as lips for that next word. And since the dual suffix is always attached after the feminine tav, you can see that this would not be, not in the dual format. It wouldn't have been. It is because there's not a tav in the word.
So the short answer is no.
Short answer is it's not dual, it's plural. And if you read it in the line where it says noun, common, masculine, plural, absolute, that is, if you look at not a lexicon, but a grammar that tells you what form it's in, it says it's plural, not dual.
Adopt.
Sure. And the next one is something we actually talked about a little bit today, I think, or some people did, but it's kind of off topic. But shivarim, the word means to break or to break in pieces from the word shavar. And you think it would be tekiah would be the, I'm sorry, teruah would be the breaking sound. This sounds more to me like breaking because of the short staccato blasts with teruah. But shivarim means to break in pieces. And interestingly, shivrim is found in Bereshit 47 and is translated there as grain. Not sure of the connection between breaking or breaking pieces and grain, except that when you pluck grain, I suppose when you rub it from, like if you're rubbing wheat, something, perhaps it breaks apart from that.
When you grind it into flour.
True, but it's not used as flour, it's used as grain. I mean, that's the translation.
I like the idea of breaking the kernels apart when you pluck a head of wheat and then crumble it so that the kernels break apart.
What was the rest of the verse for that?
I didn't copy it down here, but we can look it up.
Okay, I'll look it up real quick.
Okay.
Oh, wow, I read to 47. Joseph collected all the money to be found in the land of Egypt and the land of Canaan in exchange for the grain and purchasing.
So it doesn't give us a lot of clues in that particular passage. It's the only time it appears I found it in the Hebrew text, the scriptures.
Does that mean it's at apex that's the only place where you're saying that you found this word?
The plural, in the plural sense. Shavar appears more than that as break or break in pieces. And you can
But translating it from the plural as grain, this is a one-off, is that?
I don't remember seeing it elsewhere as anything. It's the only time I see the word shivrim in there. So it's only translated grain in this particular passage. I don't see it elsewhere in the text in my search.
Is there anything else that Joseph could have been collecting? Any other broken things that he could have been collecting?
Well, no. I mean, he was checking for his brothers for food, right? So it'd be something to do with food, I would have guessed, unless it's coins. But that doesn't seem.
If it had been earlier when it was talking about them gathering it instead of when they were paying for it, if they used, I mean.
It's not really used in place of money that I can tell, unless we're talking about, okay.
Well, what I was thinking, I mean, if it had been at the previous point when they were gathering it as opposed to selling it later, I could see that as because it was forceful, because they were getting it, I doubt that everybody just gave it up willingly.
Yeah.
It was by orders of the king or by the pharaoh. But.
Okay, so getting to chapter 18. This is a opening kind of a comment on chapter 18 this is by Yaakov Brown of Beth Melech. It says, the destruction of Babylon has been alluded to already in chapter 14, verse 8, which is a quotation of Isaiah 21, verse 9. This judgment is against pride, wicked violence, greed, and materialism, and ultimately relates to her rebellion against Elohim. The judgment is praised by Elohim's people several times, and this is from Hitgalut, but mourned by those who have adopted her evil consciousness. And then we get to chapter 18, verse 2. It says, and he cried out with a mighty voice, saying, fallen, fallen is Babylon the Great. She has become a dwelling place of demons and a prison of every unclean spirit and a prison of every unclean and hateful bird. And the graphic on there is a meme I found on the internet. It said, question, if unclean creatures were made clean in the New Testament, why are there unclean birds in the book of Revelation? It quotes from the passage above, 18 verse 2. So the comment, and it's really kind of a question, unclean birds exist in Revelation 18:2? Well, dispensationalists will say, of course there are unclean birds because the tribulation is in the age of law, not the age of grace. And I think this kind of aligns with our previous discussions and study on abrogation in Islam and Christianity, which a slide of that study is next in that original format. This is a quote from Matthew Henry, a commentary on Acts 10:15. God had, for reasons suited to the Old Testament dispensation, restrained the Jews from eating such and such meats, to which, while the dispensation lasted, they were obliged in conscience to submit. But he has now, for reasons suited to the New Testament dispensation, taken off that restraint and set the matter at large, has cleansed that which was before polluted to us, and we ought to make use of it and stand fast in the liberty wherewith Christ has made us free, and not call what common or unclean, which God has now declared clean. So anyway, again, this is Christian abrogation. I mean, Islam is famous for abrogation, but Christianity, I think, would reject that comment, although it's clear to me that Christianity has essentially abrogated the dietary restrictions and other things like Shabbat that we see as being important a lot of places in the text, as well as, of course, in our in the text of Hitgalut Revelation we've studied. And so, kind of as a way of any other thoughts on this? I mean, abrogation is probably something that is an important topic. Christianity will not probably agree with that as a term used for what their belief is in terms of texts that are no longer actionable, I guess.
What's the definition of abrogation or abrogate?
To abrogate or abrogation is revoking something that has previously been given. And so,
problem is that verse that they're quoting there, they seem to not understand the point of it, and at no point in there does God ever declare anything that's in that thing as clean.
Well, that's right. I mean, that's from
so they're
A, it's a vision, and B, it's not about food.
Right. And they're trying to take that and build a case to sin against God,
which actually violates a pretty
making a case to sin against God.
It violates a rule of within Christianity in terms of biblical interpretation, hermeneutics, of no private interpretations. So this is actually kind of it's taking a text that had nothing to do with food, is about people, and applying it to do with food, which is essentially a private interpretation, or in other words, adding to Scripture. Again, considered to be a bad practice. Anyway.
Thing is there's Christians out there that if you point to that verse and say, go read what that verse is actually about and what it's actually saying, and then come back and tell me that God was saying that those animals were clean.
So,
and
have you had success?
And they came back to me and goes, no, that's not what it says. And they actually changed their beliefs according to the Bible.
So why are they here now?
Well, they live in Oklahoma City.
Okay.
Well, on
this topic at least, yeah.
On this topic, clean and unclean animals. I gave him some hints and pushed him in certain directions, but I don't know if he's gone all the way yet. But
right.
At where unclean and clean animals are concerned, he now sees that The Bible never said that.
It's a pretty big eye opener. So I think that, yeah, it's a pretty big eye opener.
Yeah.
Well, text in chapter 18 talks a bit about Babylon. It's kind of as a reminder, a bit about Babylon. And this is from a previous Midrash. I don't think, over the last, or maybe 2 weeks ago. Traditional commentaries on who is Babylon, who or what is Babylon, list 4 different: literal Babylon, Rome, the wicked world system, or the ungodly in general. I think that the best argument, in my view, is probably, particularly to apply it to this topic, it seems like the wicked world system is a better interpretation because of the
number 4 does not fit at all.
Number 4 does, it doesn't fit at all, but it's in terms of it's along the line of interpreting it completely allegorically, with a general interpretation as this shows God's judgment against evil.
Except it's kind of specific, and it talks about leaders and what going, oh no, we don't want any part of this now. We're so sad. And if it was the ungodly in general, they would have been included in that.
Mm-hmm.
So number 4, even allegorically, cannot fit this segment. The wicked world system, kinda.
Well, I say that because when we get into the reading of
In
who
an
are all the people that are
way, that would fit if you take it allegorically. And considering it was a Jew writing it, you could probably take it allegorically and specifically and.
Well, at the time he was writing, Rome and the wicked world system would have been the same thing, probably.
True.
It's not really the same way now, I don't think, unless you interpret Rome. I mean, the Roman Empire. Maybe if Rome would be, perhaps you could say, well, Rome is the United States because of how our buildings look. They look like Roman architecture and some of the buildings we have. But that's just as a reference of those are the 4 traditional commentaries possibilities for who or what is meant by Babylon. We get to our current chapter 18, and the text is from chapter 4, or verses 4 and 5. Then I heard another voice out of heaven say, "My people, come out of her, so that you will not share in her sins, so you will not be infected by her plagues, for her sins are a sticky mess piled up to heaven, and God has remembered her crimes." And this is Yaakov Brown's comment. It says, the new voice here comes from the heavens and identifies with the people of Elohim, saying, "My people." Therefore, it is probably the voice of Yeshua, for no messenger nor any other being has the right to call the people of Elohim my people, unless they are quoting Elohim prophetically, which is the other possibility here. Continuing the comment, it reads, verse 5 suggests that the speaker is someone other than Elohim the Father. The instruction of Elohim to his people, "come out," is a common refrain throughout the Tanakh, and then listing the references. So why would he say that verse 5 sounds like someone other than Elohim the Father talking? Because it sounds like it's talking
mentions
God in the third person here. Yeah. Now, are there other translations that read differently? This is from the Complete Jewish Bible for verse 5. Are there others that read anything differently? Ben, did you have a different reading?
Mine says and
okay.
God, or references God as the third person.
Okay.
Don't we have lots of other examples, though, of, I don't know, I'm thinking like just where commandments are given and it says I am Adonai your Elohim, and then it also refers to Adonai in the third person as well in the same passage. Does that not happen sometimes?
I think it probably does. There's a famous phrase in, I think it's Genesis 19, verse 19, where it's the destruction, maybe it's 18, the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, where it says, Yah will rain fire in heavens from Yah out of the heavens.
There is another option.
What's that?
There's a third option for when somebody says "my people." It's they're one of them. If
Yeah.
Yeah.
when a Jew talking about Jews, my people.
Right.
So it might not be. It's a warning by somebody who's already seen what's coming.
Well, that would still agree with not being Elohim, the speaker here.
Oh,
It
absolutely.
says that.
I mean, I didn't think that was actually still a question.
Okay. It was still, yeah, I think it was still a question because of the sometimes where Yah speaks himself as like in the royal we and as about himself in the third person. I think you see that more frequently in places like, I want to say it's the Psalms more than the text of the Torah.
Yeah. Considering how it's talking, it does not sound like it's God the Father that would be saying this. I mean, I could see it being Yeshua that's saying this, but I mean, it could also be somebody who's already gone before and is calling back and going, "Hey, y'all need to get out of there. Bad stuff's about to happen."
Say, no, I was going to return to the person issue. In Devarim 5:6, I am Adonai your Elohim, who brought you out of the land of Egypt. And by the time you get to verse 11, it's like you are not to misuse the name of Adonai your Elohim, because Adonai will not leave unpunished someone who misuses his name. So we clearly switched to the third person by there. And when it gets to Shabbat, it says, as Adonai your Elohim ordered you to do. So again, still in third person. But it clearly began from the beginning, and by the Jewish reckoning, this is the first commandment. I am Adonai your Elohim, who brought you out of the land of Mitzrayim. So,
I do have a question about that. Wasn't it Moses that was stating these things? That this is what God says?
He is quoting Adonai, yes. But when he's quoting Adonai, he doesn't stop quoting, and he's going down through them 1 through 10. And by the time he gets down to 4 or something, he's switched to the third person from the first person.
But if the tense is different from Devarim than it is in Shemot, then probably indicates that's Moshe changing the tense versus the change in that.
That's kind of what I was getting the feeling of, is that Moshe was changing the tense as opposed to quoting God directly.
The first two,
as he was with the first two, he was most definitely quoting directly.
The first two are the first person.
Like, and don't do this.
Okay. Well, anyway, I mean, the possibility of switching to third person, even though it's in the first person, I don't know if that totally rules it out.
Right.
Because you could make the same argument here then that Yochanan was, he started off quoting directly, and then after that he's just reconveying it. So he began with a direct quote, and then after that he's just reconveying the message.
So it feels like it's unlikely that it was God the Father saying this to me. It feels like it was unlikely. Not that it was impossible, but it was unlikely. So it could have been another aspect of God that was saying this, or it could be somebody else. Because
or it could be that
it just says another voice from heaven.
They might not have been as particular about exact quotations as we are today.
I think that's very true.
That's also very true.
But we do see a bunch of times in the Tanakh come out of her in different versions of that, variants of that statement, not just from the Torah, a couple of places there, but also from the prophets frequently.
Yeah, the prophets said that a lot.
Yeah, so it's something that should not be a surprise.
So in this case, I would say the fact that it was another voice and was anonymous as being the best argument against it having been Elohim.
Mm-hmm. Doesn't say who the other voice is, I suppose you could say.
So when it's without attribution,
Because, I mean, the previous section was he cried out in a mighty voice, and it was referring to an angel.
yes,
And this just says another voice, and that
without attribution.
without attribution, which when it mentions God's voice, it's usually pretty clear who it is.
And it's
This
just
this
pretty
being so unclear about who it is makes it seem like it's definitely not the Father saying this to me.
But the voice could be, of course, an echo of some past prophet or witness or whatever too.
Oh, absolutely.
So it could be, it's like the voice of Eliyahu crying in the wilderness or something like that, that it's another voice, but it is an echo from a past voice.
Actually, if it's taking place outside of time, it could be Eliyahu at the same time.
He would be in heaven.
Well, if that were the case, it definitely would. You could say that my people would be, in the sense of, my people of Israel, my tribe, so to speak.
Wasn't Eliyahu all about double portions? Or was that was Elisha, or was that Elisha?
Elisha is the one who received the double portion.
And Ephraim means double portion, right? Doubly fruitful. All right. Continuing to verse 9. And the rulers of the earth who committed acts of immorality and lived sensuously with her, Babylon, will weep and lament over her when they see the smoke of her burning, standing at a distance because of the fear of her torment, saying, Woe, woe, the great city Babylon, the strong city, for in 1 hour your judgment has come. He continues in the commentary on this, says, verses 9 to 19 present three primary lamenting entities in succession: rulers of the earth, businessmen, cargo companies, and travel agents. None of these entities laments the city herself, rather they each lament that which they've lost due to her destruction. This adds emphasis to the self-destructive pattern of sin and its non-relational nature. Not wanting to be caught in her destruction, the rulers of the earth who had willingly adopted her immorality stand at a distance, terrified of the torment they see and lamenting the fact that it all came about so quickly. What might this mean for them? In other words, they're asking, what does the destruction of Babylon the Great mean to us, or to me personally, or to my business, for example? What's going on here?
Or if this happened to them, what might be happening to me?
Yeah, if that's definitely the case. If Babylon is to fall, how much more do I crash? Or what will my end be as well because of this destruction of Babylon?
Considering all the smoke and burning it was talking about, and it was destroyed in a single hour,
You're thinking nuclear.
I'm thinking nuclear.
So
Apparently I wasn't the only one thinking nuclear.
I was thinking of that one place, the volcano, they destroyed that whole entire island.
Yes, Vesuvius, you're thinking of.
Yeah.
It smells like salt.
That's what
Sounds
my
like a
brain went to.
Except there, because it was an ash fall as opposed to a lava and whatnot. There was no burning. Everything was just coated in a thick ash very quickly and just buried.
Yeah, but they couldn't release anything.
Right, because of the ash.
there was a time when Babylon, the literal city, was destroyed really quickly by the Tilgath-Pileser, the Assyrian king of Assyria, who conquered it quickly, and it was showed extreme brutality in basically sacking it. So it may have been something that was known as well in the sense of how this, Tilgath-Pileser appears because he also was attacking Israel as well when the Assyrians took the northern kingdom into captivity. So he was known for his destruction there, but it was even worse because Babylon and the whole that area, the area of the Mesopotamia, if you will, around Naharim, is known as kind of very similar groups of people, and it's really like attacking your own brother and destroying your own brother to have sacked Babylon so viciously.
What about that fire that Caesar blamed the Christians?
Nero?
And the burning of Rome.
Yeah, how long was that?
Days, actually weeks, if I remember.
It was a long time burning. And it wasn't destroyed. I mean,
And Rome was not destroyed by that.
but it was well known. It was definitely in the back of the memory of
Could have been.
and Christians were blamed for that. Yeah.
It could be also a meteorite.
Could be what?
A meteorite.
Okay.
Or a meteor, it would have to be a meteor. Meteorite would not take out.
Well, if it was in terms of
I
if in terms of nuclear, then which of the four potential for Babylon would that be then?
It would have to be an actual location, an actual city or area. The thing is Rome itself falling nowadays wouldn't mean anything to most people.
Mm-hmm.
Babylon itself would have to rise for this to happen in the first place.
Right.
And it would have to rise fast to become very corrupt immediately for anything like this to happen. So it either hasn't happened yet, or it's not necessarily referring to one of those specific cities, but a city that has risen and become super corrupt. And I can think of a couple of different places that fit that bill. Two of them in the U.S. One on the East Coast and one on the West Coast.
There's probably more than
almost as corrupt. They're both almost as corrupt as each other.
Yeah.
I think there's a couple on the East Coast anyway.
Well, New York specifically, because of not only the amount of area that it does, but the amount of income it gets from around the world.
Hey, Washington D.C.'s on Seven Hills, isn't it?
Well, this one didn't have, well, that was a different chapter that mentioned the Seven Hills.
DC is mostly a swamp. Literally and figuratively.
And I would love to see them go up in a nuke. I mean,
I don't think it's a good idea to say that.
Yeah, really.
Yeah.
not live at least.
Or dead. All right. Chapter 19.
Large portions of California would fit the bill.
19 verse 7. Let us be glad and rejoice and give honor to him, for the marriage of the Lamb is come, and his wife has made herself ready. Bleacher's Bible here reads bride. So who is the wife and how is she made herself ready? This is from Yaakov Brown's comment, many scholars have made a big deal out of the distinction between Israel as Elohim's wife in the Tanakh and quote unquote the church as Yeshua's bride, as if Elohim somehow became a polygamist and with a dissociative identity disorder. I thought it was kind of a funny comment. My comment really is this, is the bride becomes the wife after marriage. It's the same person. Even after marriage, we husbands often refer to our wives as our wife as our bride. True? False?
That's
True.
Yeah, so true.
So here's 19 verse 9, the comment about invited to the wedding feast. Although in the Olam Haba, individual resurrected believers will not marry, according to Matthew 22, the Messianic community as a whole is the bride of Messiah. Similar imagery of the Messiah as bridegroom and the inauguration of the kingdom as a wedding is also found in Matthew 22, 25, Mark 2, John or Yochanan 3, Romans 7, 1 Corinthians 6, 2 Corinthians 11, and Ephesians chapter 5.
I've always found this segment interesting
Mm-hmm.
because if you combine the different portions where it talks about the wedding, there seems to be three different parts aside from Yeshua's part,
Mm-hmm.
because he's always the bridegroom, always, never anything else. But there are three parts to play within the wedding itself. There's the bride, there's the handmaiden who helps the bride become ready, and there are the guests.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not sure who's supposed to be who, other than I know the Jews are included in the bride.
Right. So it seems, I mean, there's a comment here that somewhat addresses that in a couple of slides. So we'll wait to get to that. Chapter still 19, verses 20 and 21. Two verses here. The beast who was taken captive, and with it the false prophet who in his presence had done the miracles which he had used to deceive those who had received the mark of the beast and those who had worshipped his image. The beast and the false prophet were both thrown alive into the lake of fire that burns with sulfur. The rest were killed with a sword that goes out of the mouth of the rider on the horse. This is for 21. And all the birds gorge themselves on their flesh. The beast, and this is the Yaakov Brown's comment, the beast, which is the seat of power of the evil empire, along with the anti-Messiah, the false prophet, are now thrown in the place of eternal punishment. They'll later be joined by Hasatan, when he is cast into the same lake of fire and sulfur in Revelation chapter 20. The fact that they're cast alive into the lake of fire denotes torment and reminds the reader that eternal punishment is a conscious torment. The remainder of the armies of the beast are slain by the judgment of Elohim's word. There is no mention of the human participants of this battle being cast into the lake of fire. This would indicate that their deaths were physical and just that like the rest of humanity, must face the final judgment.
First part I'd say he just made up. I don't know where he got any of that.
Which part?
All this stuff about denotes torment and reminds the reader of eternal punishment being conscious torment.
It says they'll be tormented. So
The beast and the prisoner taken with the fellow's brother. Both of them are thrown alive into the lake of fire that burns with sulfur. The rest will be killed with, It doesn't mention that the rest of them thrown into the lake of fire until you get to the part about the white throne judgment.
right, that's what he says it's going to be.
And
But-
and they're thrown alive, which it doesn't specifically say that for the rest of them. During the white throne judgment, their souls are thrown there. But it's still they're still conscious. I've been told that it is very likely that they will be given their perfect bodies there so that they cannot die while being in this fire and torment for the rest of their.
Well,
It's
That's
eternal life
speculative.
as a gift. I don't think I'm going to buy that at all. There's nothing in there saying that they're going to be given perfect immortal bodies is reading a whole lot into it that just isn't there. And that's what I'm saying. It's just made up. It's not something you can get out of that text.
Anyone not found written in the book of life or thrown into the
well,
lake of fire?
read verse 10. The adversary who had received them was hurled into the lake of fire lake of fire and sulfur, where the beast and the false prophet were, and there they will be tormented day and night forever and ever.
And then it's just after that, that it was talking, or in verse 15, that anyone not found written in the book of life is thrown into the lake of fire. And that's the living and the dead that are judged at the white throne.
But it doesn't. So the one different part of that, though, is it doesn't say the same thing of verse 10 after verse 15, does it?
It says they're thrown into the lake of fire,
But it doesn't say the same thing after that. That says, and they will be tormented day and night forever and ever.
yeah.
As I see it, when things, beast, false prophet, death, grave, pain, sorrow, suffering, when these things are thrown into the lake of fire, they're destroyed and they're gone forever. They don't, stay around for all eternity. And even for Hasatan, it says, he's going to be ashes under our feet. And so to me, it's like total destruction. So I don't see any way to read into that. There's going to be,
Except the word, they'll be tormented day and night forever and ever. It's hard to be tormented if you're ashes, right?
it's questionable. So like if smoke goes up forever, it just means nobody stops it from, a fire that shall not be quenched. Well, so, let's suppose that there was a wildfire in California and it was never quenched. It's still going to run out of fuel at some point. So somebody would have to actively be keeping it burning. Otherwise, it doesn't just burn. It goes out when whatever it is it's burning up is done with. And for things like death and grave and such, I see these things as being clearly abstract concepts, and they're being destroyed. And we're not going to have any more pain or sorrow or death or graves or anything like that. They're all going to be gone. And they will be gone, and will be remembered no more. Like, literally gone.
And some of them are concepts and some of them are actual places.
Well, for all the people that are named as having been faithful and such, there's not one person named anywhere that it says that they're slated for destruction. That's a named person. And even when you read through this, it doesn't actually say, it just says if. If someone wasn't written in the book of life, but it doesn't say that there are anybody.
It says, and anyone not found written in the book of life was thrown into the lake of fire.
Yeah, but it doesn't say that there was anyone that met that criterion.
Actually, that was not in this chapter, but it was in others.
But it doesn't say that there will ever be an actual person who doesn't meet that criteria.
Yes, it does. It most definitely says that if you do certain things, you're not included in the book of life. Actually, it was in one of the other verses we read. Cowards, unbelievers, vile murderers, sexual immorality, sorcerers, idolaters, and all liars. Their share will be in the lake that burns with fire and sulfur.
Mm-hmm. And what if they repent and accept Yeshua's blood to cover their sins?
At that moment,
That would-
Yeah, but once you're dead, you don't have that choice anymore.
I don't know that that's the case at all, because it says every knee shall bow. That means that everybody is going to bow before Yeshua when they're resurrected.
Bowing before Yeshua does not mean the demons bow before Yeshua. Doesn't mean they're saved. Quite the
Doesn't mean that
opposite,
there isn't a
actually.
chance. So I don't buy this thing about somebody dying that that's the end of it. I think that can't be the case, because there are too many people that died never having had a chance to hear Yeshua's name. If you're telling me that they're going to burn forever in a lake of fire, I'm not buying that. It makes no sense.
If they didn't have that choice, except they did, it says the stars themselves and nature
Well, I'll
itself
tell you
speaks
what,
about
if
God.
I had to discover it from the stars, I wouldn't have found it. And I've studied the stars quite a bit.
It depends on the person, because God talks to people in different ways. You know how the Native Americans, they talk about the nature. And they see God in nature. even though
Well,
they
that's
don't
what the
see
Catholics teach, but I don't accept that either.
No, the Native Americans.
Yes,
We
but
are talking about the Catholics.
I'm saying the Catholics
have-
also teach
The
that.
Catholics know the truth and have decided to change it.
Right, but the Catholics teach that people can be saved by whatever it is that they believe in their own system.
Right.
And
On the other hand, the Native Americans realized that there was a spirit above all, and they worshipped it and called it the Great Spirit because they didn't know anything
the
else to
Greeks
call
had
it.
the unknown God.
Yeah, but they also worshipped every other god as more important than that. And it took Paul saying this, I mean, he
This is
took
who
what
he
they
is.
put there, the altar for the unknown God, because the Greeks just wanted to cover every base. Paul pointed that out and said, this needs to be your only. Because he's the God of the universe that made everything. And
Okay,
you,
so as
man,
far as
these
it goes
other
for
gods.
this, I agree with the idea of eternal punishment or eternal destruction. I do not agree with the idea of eternal punishing or eternal torture.
When does forever and ever end?
It doesn't.
It doesn't.
Right, but if something is destroyed and it's never
But it doesn't
restored,
say it was destroyed. It says it's tormented day and night
well, it'd
forever.
be an awful lousy fire if it didn't destroy whatever fell into it.
Like the fire and sulfur.
It doesn't say it doesn't destroy.
Yeah,
Also, it
CC had
doesn't say it doesn't-
actually
It doesn't bring
did
back
domestis.
thing that it just
What did she say?
destroyed again.
She was at 7:17. She said it reminded me of being dumped in a never-ending volcano pit. And then at 7:20, she said, "Are there not 2 times that people are judged? The one's alive when he arrives with the seals, and there's the second one from the throne."
I'm not, there's,
Well, okay, but are we saying that the people who are judged worthy are caught up to meet Yeshua in the cloud right away, and then they never face judgment? And then there's the great white throne judgment where all whoever lives, small and great, stand before the judge, and the scrolls are open, and whatever's written in there, that's what they're judged according to. So we're saying 2 different times for 2 different classes of people. Is that what we're to understand there? Is that the question?
No, it's the living and the dead, judgment of the living and the dead.
Well, no,
The living get judged first. If they don't repent when they are dead, they can never go back.
It doesn't say that the way I read it. But anyway, I was trying to figure out what that person's question was and when it
That was
was
Cece.
too. Was that Cece's question?
Mhm.
Was it a question to be answered or was it just a comment? But anyway, so yes, to me, it does sound like that there are possibly 2 different situations. And one is if somebody died in Yeshua, then they will be resurrected in Yeshua, and then they will never face judgment.
right, that was somewhere in the passage
talking
that
about
was
first
called the
versus
first,
second
the
resurrection.
first resurrection.
Mhm.
But then there's a second class of people, and those are people who weren't saved by Yeshua. And in my view, when they are resurrected, there will be a period there of perhaps 100 years where those people will be brought up and they will be given a chance to come to understand what it is that they didn't know, and everything will be revealed to them, and it'll be, plainer than the wart on their nose or whatever.
Maybe, but again, like you said with other things, it doesn't say that here.
It doesn't say it.
What I could see is basically when from Adam all the way up to the end, everybody who died and did not accept Yeshua, and they,
Which is about 100 million people, by the way.
yes, but then then
So far.
they see that, they recognize that he's king, who he is, but they don't accept him as Lord, as one of them in their lives, then they're the ones who go into that way.
Those who actually rejected him in life.
So there's going to be about,
Because there are people who didn't know about it, but there are people who knew about him and rejected. Those are ones who already are
They've already
lost.
made their choice.
They made that choice.
Let's move on to chapter 20, where this talks about the chaining of Hasatan for 1,000 years. It says, next I saw an angel coming down from heaven and had the key to the abyss and a great chain in his hand. He seized the dragon, that ancient serpent who is the devil and Hasatan, the adversary, and chained him for 1,000 years. He threw him into the abyss, locked it, and sealed it over him, so that he could not deceive the nations anymore until the 1,000 years were over. After that, he has to be set free for a little while.
Mm.
So, commentary here by Yaakov Brown. The messenger with the key and chain binds Satan, making this messenger more powerful than Satan, and seals him in the abyss for 1,000 years. The seal is similar to that used to seal Yeshua's tomb. However, while Yeshua had the power to lay down his life and take it up again, John 10:17, thus breaking the seal of his tomb and bringing resurrected life and salvation to humanity, Satan is unable to break free. In fact, in the end, he is freed by Elohim, and then only for a short time. There's much unnecessary debate over the 1,000 years. Whether we take it literally or figuratively, 1,000 years is representative of a long period of time as we measure it within time and space, but remains just a brief part of eternity. What is important is the present verse, is the reason for Satan's imprisonment, so that he would not deceive the nations any longer until the 1,000 years were completed. There's discussion about in rabbinic writings 1,000 years as a day and that sort of thing, but I've not seen anyone really come up with what I thought was a reasonable answer to why is Hasatan chained for 1,000 years, and then why is he then released? I mean, you can say that the 1,000-year reign is indicative of the overall picture of a 7,000 years plus 1,000 years of humanity, perhaps. But still, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me for why are we letting this guy go again? Why is he letting out? Well, not us, but why is he being released? Now, you had your hand up.
From what I understood, this 1,000 years corresponds to the same 1,000 years millennial reign of Yeshua over the nations before everything is finally wiped away. And Satan is released for a very short time right before being thrown into the pit and into the lake of fire.
But it seems that even after this 1,000 years is up, there's plenty of humanity that's willing to join Hasatan in rebellion against Yah, which is
because there are humans that even when everything is perfect and they can't accept it and will go along with the evil. Seen it happen in every generation. There is a few that'll always choose evil over good because they just want to go that way. So, and this is the last chance for them. They can choose evil or they can choose good. And if Satan is released for a little while, from what I understand, it's only for a very short time, like a week or so, from what I've been told. I didn't remember seeing anything that was specific about how long, but I was told, but it's taught that it's about a week, and he gets that long to ensnare as many people as he can before going finally into the pit, and that's where they make their final decision.
Here's Stern's commentary on verses 2 through 7. It says 1,000 years, a millennium. Depending on their overall approach to the book of Revelation, see his notes, Interpreters are divided over whether this period is symbolic, amillennialists, or historical, and if historical, possibly present, post-millennialists, or definitely future, premillennialists, I can say the words. And if future, literally 1,000 years, most dispensationalists, or not. Amillennialism sees chapter 20 as a recapitulating the events described in earlier chapters, rather than describing a chronologically later period. Postmillennialism understands a millennial as the present historical age, with the body of the Messiah establishing righteousness on earth in increasing measure, in which chapter 19 does not speak of the Messiah's victorious return, but of the triumph of good over evil at the end of the age. Premillennialism alone expects a future millennial in which the Messiah himself will rule on earth, and I share this opinion, but I also agree with Lance Lambert, a Messianic Jew living in Israel, who writes, "It is my belief that there will be a millennium. It would not alter my faith or joy in the Lord if there were no such period. I find myself unable to hold such a conviction in an argumentative or hotly dogmatic spirit. If we were honest, both views present us with problems which are not easily answered. The vital need is to be ready for the Lord's coming and for all that will follow."
Yeah, because I get my feeling about how this is set up. It does not feel like it's that some of the events are overlapping, some happen at different times, and some of them it's not. It does not feel chronological. It feels like it's in some ways really disjointed because he puts things that would have to happen way after before, and
the translators have put parentheses in there to explain some of those, like where it says, "And the rest of the dead live not again for 1,000 years," and things like that. So,
yeah. So some of it has hinted at explanations, but it doesn't feel chronological. I mean, there's.
Well, I don't think those parenthetical notes are added to the text unless they're in italics. If it's not in italics, it's not added. It's actually relative in the.
This is in the text, and this is why I think that the premillennial view is the most likely, because it does say, "And the rest of the dead live not again for 1,000 years."
Right.
So that does tell me there's going to be a 1,000-year period in there.
Mhm.
Or something. Now,
Yeah, there's going to be a 1,000-year period.
if we say that that's a recapitulation of the previous millennium or whatever, okay, but that still makes a millennium yet in the future.
Mhm.
And the post-millennial view, I like it, and that would be great if that's really how things turned out. But we haven't made any progress toward good triumphing over evil, really.
It's kind of gone the other way in most cases, I think.
Well, I don't know.
I mean, some things.
I can't say that things are worse than what they used to be, but they just don't seem to have gotten better. So
I think culturally worse.
Yes, very culturally worse, but
Physically better.
Yeah.
Physically better, but
Much better.
Is
We
there
live in
culture
society that
anciently?
is
I
so
don't know.
culturally.
We sleep on
awful
comfortable
that-
beds.
and
We don't sleep on the
it's
ground.
relatively recent.
I'm
But
sorry?
that's not my measure of good. So I don't
Well,
measure
it's
good by
cyclical,
having
yeah.
indoor plumbing and synthetic bedding and that kind of stuff.
But all those things add up to longer and more enjoyable lives for people.
Well, now,
But it being a woke
But
society.
we also have nuclear weapons that could just destroy everybody too. So arguably, we live in an era now where the idea that everybody could be killed by terrorism isn't out of the question. And we're still at much at the mercy of natural catastrophes as what we were before. I mean, we're still at much risk of
Actually, considering how much more we know about them than they ever did before, we now have knowledge of how many things could actually destroy us.
but we're no closer to stopping them really.
Oh,
Well,
absolutely.
okay, so we did just crash into a tiny little asteroid to see if we can nudge it off course, just in case there ever were a big one, we have any chance of doing it. But so far, we haven't succeeded. So. anyway, so out of all that, I would say, to me, it sounds like, yes, there definitely is yet a millennium in the future.
Oh, definitely.
Between those three different views on it, I likewise would say, any one of them could be. I think that the evidence that shows up from some of those explanations that are given there, they seem pretty definitive, both that it's like a literal 1,000 years and that 1,000-year period happens sometime in the chronology of what is explained there, even if the events aren't necessarily in chronological order. Somewhere in the future chronology, there is going to be this 1,000-year period. It's what I get out of that.
Oh, absolutely.
So it kind of goes back in terms of, he did 2 to 7, I was going to talk specifically about 5 and 6. The rest of the dead did not come to life until the 1,000 years were over. This was the first resurrection. Blessed and holy is anyone who has a part in the first resurrection. Over him, the second death has no power. On the contrary, they will be Kohanim of God and the Messiah, and they will be ruled with him for the 1,000 years. We talked in the past about how Aramaic, in the Aramaic text, there's 2 different words for priest, kumreya and kana or kahana, whereas in this text of those, it only uses the word related to which Hebrew word? Cohen, right? Doesn't use the general sense. It uses the Cohen sense in this Aramaic text. And then 2 slides on Stern's commentaries. First resurrection is coming to life of God's holy people, described in verses 4 and 6. Second resurrection is not mentioned as such. It is implied by the parenthetical remark that the rest of the dead did not come to life until 1,000 years were over, as you're talking about Denver. Verse 12. At which time they are alive only long enough to experience the second death, which has no power over believers. They will be Kohanim, priests of God and the Messiah, and of the Messiah. You, the people of Israel, and this is going back to Shemot 19, you shall be for me a kingdom of Kohanim and a holy nation. That's the kingdom of priests. You believers in Yeshua are kings Kohanim, 1 Peter 2:9, in Exodus 19:6. These promises reach their fulfillment here. So the kingdom of priests, in his view, the kingdom of priests comment or prophecy from Shemot 19 actually doesn't come about until this part of the end times, in Revelation chapter 20. Verses 7 to 9. When 1,000 years are completed, Satan will be released from his prison, and he will come out to deceive the nations which are in the 4 corners of the earth, Gog and Magog, to gather them together for the war. The number of them is like the sand of the sea, and they came up on the breadth of the land, and it's the word there in the Hebrew text would be Eretz. He said Eretz Israel, and surrounded the encampment of the set-apart ones and the beloved city. In other words, Jerusalem is what he thinks. The fire came down from heaven and devoured them. So he says, the set-apart ones are redeemed, ethnic Israel, and those redeemed from among the nations. The beloved city is without doubt Jerusalem, flood of peace. The titles Gog and Magog alert us to the relevance of Ezekiel chapter 36 to 48. Ezekiel 36 and 37 speaks of ethnic Israel's salvation and the greater son of David, Yeshua's rule over ethnic Israel and the land, corresponding to Revelation 20, verses 1 through 6. In chapter 38 and 39 of Ezekiel, Gog, the king from Magog, seeks to disrupt this rule with an eschatological battle in which the nations of the earth come against Israel and Jerusalem. Fulfilled in Revelation 27 to 10. Finally, Ezekiel 40 to 48, with the rebuilt temple and a renewed Jerusalem, sees its ultimate fulfillment in Revelation 21, 22, next chapters. In both Ezekiel and Revelation, a temporary kingdom is followed by an eternal kingdom after a gathering of the nations for war. So there's often some discussions about who is Gog and Magog, and we can see that this battle of Gog and Magog occurs in the distant future. It's not something that is right in front of us.
It's not Armageddon.
Yeah, if you look at it in terms of, it's after the 1,000 years. It's after the millennium in this context. If you look at it as this event's happened after the millennium have occurred. Now, there's the sections from Gog Magog from Ezekiel actually found their way into the Quran as well. And they are very conscious of the Gog Magog fight. And they believe that Gog and Magog will be attacking them. So it's like a mirror,
As in
potentially.
like Iran, Saudi Arabia, where?
They don't have a location for it that I've seen, except to say it's in some renderings of it, the understanding is one is Russia and the other is what currently is England or the UK attacking them. And there used to be, I guess it might have been rebuilt, but there was a statue, I believe, of Gog and Magog as people that used to be across from Westminster Abbey in London. It was destroyed in the Blitz. The Germans burned it, I guess, hit it with bombs. So, well, if England has a statue of Gog and Magog, maybe that's an indicator that somehow they're part of that.
I hope not, because we got a lot of stupid statues in our country.
Oh yeah.
Oh, they're getting worse.
CC sent a comment. 24. The saints that died were raised from death to life again, but not the death that were unfaithful. Then in 2012 through 15, the books are opened. That's when everyone is judged.
Right. That's the books are open. That would be after the second resurrection and the general judgment of mankind. Yeah. And I think that it says that everyone goes through that, but it seems to me that it would be really only for those who are the recently second resurrected folks, if I'm reading it right.
And maybe also, well, actually, it appears, now that I think about it and just reading through it again, the Great White Throne Judgment, which is the one, it's only for the dead that didn't come through the second resurrection, or sorry, the first resurrection. They come out during the second resurrection, and this is only a judgment of those dead. Any of those who survived into the through the millennium, that's where they're the ones that would have joined Gog and Magog.
Mm-hmm.
If they would fall, if they fall onto the evil side, they would have joined Gog and Magog.
Right.
And
been a rebellion. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that's how I understand it from the Sora passage that we read from Yochanan 3 every week in our liturgy, is that if you are one who is saved by Yeshua, he didn't come to judge people, he came to save them. And so you have those options there. You can either be saved or judged.
Yeah.
And if you weren't saved, your judgment is.
But more importantly, if you are saved, then you don't enter into judgment.
Right.
Because the slate has already been washed clean.
So basically, at the White Throne Judgment, when they break open the Book of Life, it almost sounds like nobody that didn't come through the first resurrection and comes to this one will be in there.
So the reason I don't know if that's true or not is because there is the 1,000 years, and then there is that time that Hasatan is let loose for a little season, which some people have speculated could be as much as 100 years, but that's because there's some prophecy that said every man shall die being not less than 100 or something like that.
Mhm.
So that people will have lived long enough so that even if they were an aborted baby or whatever, they'd still live to be 100 years old. And that people during that time would have the opportunity to make their choice. Either I want to be covered by the blood of Yeshua, which is extremely powerful, or not. And I think that whatever somebody's sins were, even if they were a murderer or whatever, that I think Yeshua's blood is still powerful enough to wash away those sins.
Oh, definitely.
Well, so
But
then that means it
got
would
to
be
get to the point where-
possible.
They've got to get to the point where they make a decision.
I think that it's possible that somebody like, say, Adolf Hitler, or pick your favorite person of the not favorite type, who could in fact ask for forgiveness, sincerely make teshuvah, live for 100 years, turn their life around, and at the end really be accounted worthy to be written in the book of life. I think it would happen. And if Adolf Hitler is there at the end, and we can say, the power in Yeshua's blood is just beyond human imagination. And so that there aren't people that are like just too far gone, or there's, that Yahweh's arm is shortened that he can't save or something like that. That just doesn't happen. That what he wills is what happens. And so I think that it's possible. And it doesn't say in here anywhere that that doesn't happen. It just says if. So it leaves us with a choice. But it doesn't say that in the end, everybody won't have settled in on the right choice.
Well, God gave us the free will to choose.
It doesn't say that. So.
Kind of applied, not here, but the rest of the entire.
Depends on how you read it. So.
Chapter 21. Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth. For the old heaven and the old earth had passed away, and the sea was no longer there. And I saw the holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, prepared like a bride beautifully dressed for her husband. My comment, the city is like a bride, and this isn't the first time you've seen the phrase new heaven, new earth. It's also in the last book of Yeshayahu or Isaiah. Chapter 66.
Isn't there a verse in the Bible that says, when talking about the last days, the old heaven and earth will be wiped away in a fervent heat?
That's 2 Peter.
2 Peter, yeah.
Okay. Okay, because what would there be a need for a new heaven and a new earth if there's an old heaven and an old earth?
Ain't no more.
Right, and if it's wiped away in a fervent heat, there's actually a scientific understanding that can actually fit that. A fervent heat. I've looked up definitions for it, and the one thing that comes to mind is a nuclear fire. The thing is that something that would cause a nuclear fire like that is if all of the strong and weak nuclear bonds broke at once. Everything would burn. Everything would be gone.
What do you mean by broke?
If you break a nuclear bond, you've got a nuclear bomb, basically. But
He's
you're only
saying
breaking
bond.
a few.
Nuclear bonds.
Bond. Yes, strong and weak nuclear bonds.
So there's the strong force and the weak force that hold atomic matter together. And if that field were erased from physics, then of course everything would just fall apart.
In a fervent heat. The thing is who holds the world together?
Is it a giant turtle?
It's turtles all the way down.
I didn't say who holds up the
Oh, okay. Misunderstood the question.
world. Who holds everything together?
We keep it on the axis.
Who keeps it together?
So anyway, what it means, I really don't know. There are lots of possible things that it could mean. What I do believe is that Yahweh is sovereign and all he has to do is say it, and since he can't lie, if he says it, then it's true.
Yeah, which is kind of what I was getting at. Yeshua is the nuclear bonds. He is what holds the universe together. If he steps away from everything, it all comes apart in a massive fire. And that could be the wiping away of the old.
But
The
then you
old
could say
creation.
how much of the heavens will be wiped away? All of it, even out to.
But now, but there's a new heaven and new earth. I mean, a whole new of everything. And the old would have to be wiped away. And if he is the nuclear bonds, he steps away and there are no bonds. It's just gone, all gone. Big boom.
There is a moon that is exactly like the Earth. And it is
Not
actually
exactly.
very close.
Doesn't matter.
Well, not exactly. Like the Earth,
It's more like a rainforest.
No.
then it's not exactly like the Earth.
The seas.
But yeah, if everything let go all at once, Yeshua steps away, all the bonds are gone, all the bonds are broken, everything goes up in a massive fireball. The entire universe at once goes up a massive fireball.
So,
And then we've got a new heaven
Well,
and new earth.
As I see it, if I can be saved, then making a whole new earth, the new heavens and whatever, that's probably the easy part.
Oh yeah.
21 verse 6. And he said to me, it is done. I'm the Aleph and the Tav, the beginning and the end, to the one who thirsts I shall give of the fountain of the water of life without payment. So the comment here is about that word, it is done, or it is fulfilled, so to speak. The root word that is ginomai in the Greek text, and ginomai is translated as fulfilled in Greek Matthew, and one of our favorite verses, so to speak, is from Matthew 5:17-19. Think not that I am come to destroy the law or the Torah or the prophets. I am not come to destroy, but to fulfill. For I say to you, till heaven and earth pass, one jot or tittle shall in no wise pass from the Torah, this is from the King James Law, till all be fulfilled. And so you see that there's still fulfilled up here in verse 17, but this is the point where it's all fulfilled. This is not all fulfilled until Revelation 21. Because if you look at it at two different, if you're looking just in a Greek text, the Greek word for when Yeshua on the execution stake, on the cross, says it is finished, it's not a word for, it's not ginomai in the Greek texts. It's tetelestai. The telos, the verb to fulfill or to complete, is used there. And so if we're asked,
So basically what he said when he was on the stake, he said, I have finished this part of what I needed to do.
but yes, if you're asked, when will the Torah pass away? When heaven and earth pass away? And we see that passing away in chapter 21 of Revelation. And it's the same terminology used there as in Matthew 5:18. When is it all ginomai? It's all ginomai in Revelation 21. And so just looking at Greek text versus Greek text, that's what you see here. And so it seems to me that it's the terminology in Greek Revelation supports the idea, or I guess argues for the fulfillment from Matthew 5, when the Torah is, fulfilled, is when heaven and earth pass, which is we've got that in the text. We know when that is, at least in terms of as a future event. And Matthew 5 equals or is fulfilled in Revelation 21.
Which is the way of saying this isn't just idiomatic speech or something like that. When it says until heaven and earth shall pass, it literally means that that's a future coming thing that you can expect. And it's not like the expression people use, like when hell freezes over or something that they expect not to happen.
Right.
It's something that is actually expected to happen in the future.
Mm-hmm.
That's an absolute.
And part of the reason for it, of course, is we see everything in chapter 22 of Hitgalut, where all of the things that are of time-related sort of things are not there, because there's no new moons anymore, probably, right?
It's just daytime all the time without need of any sun or moon.
Yeah. I just have the one slide here
That's gonna
on.
create havoc with my sleep schedule.
You won't have to sleep anymore.
So chapter 22, which is after heaven and earth have passed away. Next, the angel showed me the river of the water of life, sparkling like crystal, flowing from the throne of God and of the Lamb. Between the main street and the river was a tree of life, producing 12 kinds of fruit, a different kind every month, and the leaves of the trees were for the healing of the nations. The Hitgalut Hebrew translation of that for the leaves of the tree is probably not surprising. It's Eitz Chaim, which is often understood as a euphemism for Torah. So even though this is post-Torah, so to speak, it's still a reference, potentially a reference to it with the Eitz Chaim, or it could just be the tree of life, in the sense of producing of fruits in a literal sense. So if it's producing fruit, we're still eating it in that sense, right? So there's still such thing as food, even in Revelation 22.
So what would be the 12 kinds?
We have no idea. It's kind of the point.
I wasn't putting you on the spot.
Fruit of the Month Club.
Yeah, basically. Sounds like it.
It's hard to tell because you don't really, if you got 24 hours of light, I guess you can grow a lot of things. Why does it change? Is it the same tree producing different kinds of fruit? So it looks like. Same, you typically say that you can't produce two kinds of fruit in the same tree. Well, this is.
Hey, it's a new heaven and new earth. The rules are not the same.
Rules are not the same, yeah.
Physics does not necessarily exist in this new.
Well, at least physics as we know it.
Yeah, physics as we know it does not necessarily exist.
Okay, but then what needs to be healed?
Yeah. How are people get sick?
It says healing of the nations. And healing of the nations doesn't necessarily mean physical healing. It could be political healing. Bringing everything back into line under God.
But once all things are new, shouldn't
But
that
once all
already
things
be
are new,
taken
yeah,
care of?
I'm not sure why it's.
Do people still have a sin nature?
Yeah.
Like the soul rebel?
Hearts, minds. It could be.
That's in the lost.
land.
That's in the lost chapter 23.
It could be also the land.
Well, no, it definitely forbids adding to it.
It could be the land that needs to be healed.
Again, why?
Everything's
Healing
new.
of
It's
some
a new
kind
heaven
to the
and new
nations.
earth.
Okay.
So we're not, it's pure speculation at
And
this
there are
point,
no
but
more
it's-
human governments, so the nations cannot be human governments.
Doesn't necessarily say there are human governments.
No more humans.
Doesn't say there are any more humans.
There's a new man though.
Yeah, there's no more humans at this point because there's no more death, no more suffering. That pretty much rules out the existence of humans.
Spirit.
Well, there's no more human condition.
Well, it's been fun reading through Hitgalut and Revelation, but we're at the end of it right now.
Naomi has a question. I have a question.
It says, and his bride has prepared herself. Well, are we if we're part of
Oh, yeah, that
the
slide
bride,
you
how are we
said,
supposed to prepare ourselves?
yeah, that slide you said was supposed to come up, never did come up.
Yeah, I don't know. It was on I think it was more tangential than I remembered it. Well, for marriage, how does the bride prepare herself?
Wash, perfume, pretty dress.
But she gets the pretty dress from God. It said
The point.
he dresses her in fine linen, bright and clean.
Yeah, she's got to put it on though. And dresses like that.
Has been given her to wear.
Mm-hmm. It has been given to her to wear.
Which passage are you
Doesn't
looking
mean
at?
it means she needs to put it on.
19, 7 and 8. Yes, 7,
17:7.
19, 7 and 8.
Yeah, and it does, and in this section, when it talks about the marriage supper, it does mention guests, which is a different category, and I'm wondering who that's supposed to be exactly.
Wait, I don't see that.
Because, and in another verse somewhere else, it mentions the handmaid of the bride who helps make her ready. And the thing is biblically, I've seen that. Sounds like the Messianics who are trying to get the Jews back under the Messiah and getting her ready for her brideship or whatever. But as Messianics, we are also part of the bride, so it's a multi-function in that case. But this is like speculation. I'm not sure. I really do want to know who the guests are, though.
What I think, well, I thought it was on a slide, maybe I didn't put that one in, but there was one of the commentaries, maybe I read it and didn't put it in, said that in general terms, the bride and the wife are mentioned together in that sense that they are going to it. Now,
Yeah, that one you put up, but that was just literally the bride and the wife are the same person, which isn't the handmaiden, which isn't the guests.
I don't see him.
Which is where which is the kind of what I'm wondering about. I have speculation about who the handmaiden is.
well, if you are the bride, why worry about who else is coming, right? You're ready for your husband, not the guest list.
Yeah, but it mentions specifically the handmaid,
I didn't see handmaid.
well, that's in a different. That's not here in Revelation. That's at a different mentioning.
But to answer your question, I mean, how does the bride prepare herself is actually just in the next verse. The way she's prepared herself is because she is wearing the fine linen, the bright and clean has been given to her to wear. That's how she's prepared herself. In other words, it's allegorical or metaphorical. The bride has made herself ready by wearing the wedding clothes. The righteousness is the fine linen. She's prepared herself by being what? Being righteous.
She cleaned herself, basically.
Or she has been prepared. You could look at it that way too.
Yeah.
It was she was cleansed by the groom. That's probably a good way of saying it. It was not something specific except for the righteous deeds of God's people, as it says in what fine linen means. It means that she has put on righteousness, so to speak. How do you put on righteousness? Well, it's not just you change a garment, but putting on righteousness indicates living the lifestyle of being righteous. And righteousness is based on what God says it is. Let's pray. Abba, we thank you for allowing us to midrash on your word. We thank you for the wisdom and insight that you brought to us and to bring into the forum. We thank you for all these things in Yeshua's name. Amen.
So what I wanted to say was I like our departure into the Ketuvim Netzarim, and I'm wondering what you have planned for next year.